Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So small but mighty group, but perhaps I'll explain why maybe some people may have thought that we have another meeting. So, we are, each committee is going to be tagged with or assigned with developing guiding principles, right? Guiding principles are going to be kind of our guide rails on how we get to recommendations. And so in order to do that, because there are smaller groups for every committee and each small group is developing a guiding principle, we got to come together and figure out what are going to be our top 3, 5, et cetera. And so in order to do that, we're going to do a Zoom meeting to kind of do something called a max diff survey, where you kind of pit two that are kind of similar against each other, and then you rate like how it meets our SAP vision, for instance, and maybe a miracles priority, which we'll talk a little bit about. So perhaps those who aren't here tonight saw that email. It's like, oh, we don't have an in-person meeting. We're going to have a virtual one on the 24th, which is also now the 31st, because there is a area. A few of the board members are hosting area meetings too, so we didn't want to compete with that. So the 24th was an area meeting, so we moved it to the 31st. So there's a little confusion, but we're gonna work with what we got, and we and then they'll be able to see a bunch of different guiding principles, and that is okay. Good point, ladies. Good point. So today, I'm a quote kind of person, so I get inspired by quotes. Someone want to read for us?
Who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. Steve Jobs.
I'm not calling you guys crazy. However, we are bold enough to be in this space to try to create the change that others probably talk about all the time, but we don't actually do. So just, think about our little friend Steve Jobs. May he rest in peace. A few updates. The survey is finally closed after we've gone to some smaller communities to really try to drive participation. People get like survey fatigue, so I get it. But we will be disaggregating that information both by area. I think we asked some of it by school, by demographic information, just so we could start to weigh what our families may think about things around buildings, boundaries, and programs. And the way the survey was developed was that questions around buildings, questions around boundaries, questions around programs. So we'll be able to start to see some of that information in April. We'll probably use it more heavily in the fall, but I just want you guys to be able to use it and see it over the summer months if you are so inclined. There is an Idlewood redistricting happening this year, and people are like, why are we doing that? And we aren't done with student assignment. There are several East Blast projects that were approved that they have to do because they have to spend the money. This was one of them. Excuse me. So is Cross Keys. So is Sequoia High School, Middle School. All those were like already in the works. So I like interject myself to say like, and how are we talking to the community, right? So Idlewood was a good example. This is probably the one I'm more heavily involved in. So we went to the Idlewood community. We have been going to their apartment complexes. Our family and support engagement specialist called all 400 people on the list in their language, because that is a very culturally diverse area, to say, hey, this vote happened, or, come to the meeting. And then afterward, it did get voted to redistrict it. We called them to say, hey, this happened. Are you aware of it? Do you have questions, right? With our family support specialists, who are amazing. And so it was interesting doing that with planning, because we looked at several scenarios. It was like, oh, easy. Put all the 4th and 5th graders there. They go to Tucker, nothing, right? And then the building's rebuilt. Cool, it's great. 4th and 5th graders are throughout the whole boundary. Transportation logistics can't happen. Parent and family challenges. So I have a 4th grader at Smoke Rise and a kindergartner at Idlewood. How does that work, right? So we ended up doing it geographically, and ironically, the bulk of the students are the furthest away in the boundary from Smoke Rise. So it looks a little wonky. So the map next year is going to look weird, because there's going to be a little tiny square in Idlewood that says Smoke Rise, because those kids are now redistricted there. And we talked a little bit about language, I think, because people are like, is this a temporary or is this permanent? And so it is permanent until this committee finishes our redistricting and reimagining, right? Because that whole cluster, there's a lot of under and overpopulated, so we're going to have to balance that one. So unfortunately, some of those families will have to move again, because they'll more than likely not all stay at Smoke Rise, or we'll put in something in our policy that says, once you move, you get to finish out, and then the next kid's coming in, right? That's probably the more family-friendly way of doing it, right? I have a few suggestions on the policy end that we need to look at. Yeah. So the possibility of new members, Kayla and I will be drafting something next week actually to send to any members that we haven't seen. This may be our 6th or 7th meeting. So any members we haven't seen for 3 or 4 to say like, hey, we miss you. But also like, if you're not gonna come, we're gonna give you a seat, right? And so 300 people applied to be on this committee. So once we figure out like what's going on and try, our encouragement to get people back, we're gonna try to maybe get some text messages out for reminders of meetings and things like that. We will then onboard people that are interested, that had already applied. There are some board member recommendations for people that have been following the work. So we will probably onboard them over the summer, like, hey, here's what this committee has done all school year. You gotta, bring you along the journey before you just start in the fall. We don't want them to start, fresh and green. And then every month, a few committee members have mentioned like, hey, we got to start getting this out to the masses, right? Well, we took a lot of time to learn, but like kind of after this portion, we're going to start doing a lot and coming up with ideas. And in efforts for people to not believe that this just came out of left field, we want to start kind of pushing out information. So one effort, and there are several, and I'll talk a little bit about a few of them. One is to make a monthly video. So after all the committees meet, we will summarize in a video format like, hey, this is what SAP did this last month. Here are things we're thinking about. Here are ideas that are emerging. Please follow the work. Here's a way to contact us for feedback. So that video will get shared at the board every month now. I started it this past month. So we shared our video, and then board members got engaged and was like, oh, we'll share it with our constituents. Please do at your meetings, whatever. On top of that, right after the board meeting, I will also share it with all the PACs, the PTAs, and all the principals to share out. So hopefully it just starts, I just want people to start talking about it, right? Good and bad press is good for this project, so we want it out there. And at that board meeting, Decatur-ish was there, and so then they hit me with like 17 questions right after that, like, hey, I want it, because we have a new rep. So good like drumming up of just advocacy and pushing out the information is also happening, and any other ideas I am open to, so we can share what we are doing. All right, so this packet will be the same packet for the next 3 months, this month and the next 2 months. We will be developing guiding principles. So the goal is to come up with 2 or 3 for buildings, boundaries, programs. When we come back in the fall, we'll actually start with programs. There's a little strategy around this, right? If we know where program stuff should be, then we could talk about boundarying, and then the boundaries and programs will lead to what we need to do with buildings, right? And so it'll kind of be a little bit mixed up in the order that we've been doing it. All right, so if you did not come to February, I don't even know what month we're in, February meeting of the whole?
The big one.
The big one, February meeting of the whole. We practiced a little bit about what a guiding principle is. And again, I'm a visual person, like guardrails, a fence, whatever, right? That's your bucket on how, right? Like you can develop your guiding principles. And so I came up with a little action kind of item to think about the guiding principles. So the first thing you need to do is just think tank. When we're talking about buildings, you're going to go back to, this is why we do worksheets. So that worksheet that you guys used in buildings, and I know this is a mixed group, just look at what kind of ideas came out of that, what kind of things you were talking about, what questions you had that hopefully we answered, the data around buildings. You're going to go back to that worksheet and just start think tank ideas. We have some chart paper for those who need to write stuff on big paper like me. And just what were some of the big things that came out of that, historical context related to it, what's important, who's impacted. You're just going to brainstorm first. After you brainstorm, you're going to try to rank them. Like, what is most important to our vision based on this brainstorm and that historical context and all the work we did. And I think we did buildings in October and all that work. And then the ones that kind of raise to the top, you'll develop guiding principles around those, okay? Your guiding principles should be action-oriented, it should be aligned with our vision, and it should be adaptable. So you can't be like, Tucker should go to, that's action-oriented. It does not align with our vision because it's way too specific. And it's not adaptable because you're talking about one of our 19 high schools, right? And so you want to think big picture. Again, think of the fence, right? And remember that these are the what, not the how. Let me talk a little bit about the how. So all these guiding principles that we develop, and once we vote on them, there's going to be an internal SAP committee that works over the summer that we're calling SAP Institute. Some people from each of the committees will be in those, as well as staff who have to do the how. So we could just start kind of thinking a little bit through, like, is this even possible, right? Like, we're thinking big, but I also don't want to bring options that are just so far-fetched that we can't actually do them. And so that's why SAP is the what, and then I will be doing a lot of ping pong in between the what we say and the district and how can we do it, especially as we start developing ideas around recommendations. So that's how we're gonna work with the guiding principles. We, at that meeting of the whole, we did an example. So a good example is there should be options available to teachers to help them ensure that cell phones don't disrupt class, because this was about the disconnect to reconnect policy. A bad one is DeKalb County School District should make all students put cell phones in safe lockers before each class. Super, super specific. What if we can't afford safe lockers? What if, I don't know, a parent needs to reach a child because they have a medical condition, right? So you want to be flexible enough, but also, again, provide guide rails. Then there's a question in your worksheets that says, and then what problem is this addressing, right? We want to know, like, that we're doing it because we're addressing an issue that, again, goes back to that October meeting, a issue that we've established. You want to connect it to the SAP vision. So whatever we come up with, how does it connect? Because we want to always bring it back to our vision. And then we want to talk about how it connects to one of our miracle workshops. At the meeting of the whole, somebody was like, miracles? What you talking about? Touche. I ain't tell y'all. So let's talk about what miracles is. And we'll bring it back to, and our big question, I'll come back to that one. Let's see if this has sound. Yay. Miracles.
Hello, DCSD family. Education leaders across the country are working to find ways to not just address, but grow their respective institutions into highly engaged, student-centered, systemic organizations. The work that is required cannot be done overnight. It can't be driven by the people alone. Many of our students are not being given the best opportunity to grow and excel due to many factors. These factors, while oftentimes may look like an individual, actually lives in the policies, beliefs, and the culture of the system. While there's no silver bullet to changing the predictable outcomes of our most marginalized students, there is a way to disrupt the systemic challenges that our schools operate from. Miracles is a continuous improvement framework designed to help district and school leaders address and shift policies, practices, and expectations within their own organizations. There are elements of schools and districts that are tightly and loosely coupled that have major strongholds on culture and expectations of students, staff, and community members. The Miracles Framework process will help each individual to build a school or district-specific roadmap to start the journey towards improved, institutionalized opportunities for all learners. The Miracles Framework is an evidence-based approach to education quality improvement that enables districts to improve their academic and operational performance and ultimately transform their student outcomes. The framework comprises of 8 components that work together in concert to improve educational quality and drive a positive academic and operational transformation. Miracles is an acronym. Each letter represents a critical arm to our Central Office Improvement Plan. Motion towards equity, improved instructional core, rigorous course of study, attract and retain high-quality staff, commitment to accountability, learning environments that support student success, establish expected targets driven by results, and sound fiscal stewardship. Together, we can lay the groundwork for success and growth for all.
So Dr. Horton provides space for all of his leaders to come and report every month to him and his cabinet about what we are doing to reach Miracle's tenants. So each of us have to create goals in the beginning of the year, and then monthly we kind of check in on those goals about what we did the past 30 days, what we're doing in the future 30 days, and then celebrations if you actually met a goal. And so everything we do in the district ties back to Miracles, which is kind of connected to our strategic plan. And so this is just kind of a definition of each of those. And so when we say talk, and obviously when we created the vision for SAP, we make sure that it tied to the Miracles framework, which is probably why you see those, and the 5 E's, right? Because that's your educational attainment. How do they get there? We got to have good building boundaries and programs for the kids to learn in order to get to educational attainment, right? So just making sure that we're connecting this work and we're not like doing this in isolation to the larger scheme of what's happening in the district. So when we think about buildings, when you guys go through this process of developing those guiding principles, the big question that we need to grapple with is like, what do we need to consider when determining right sizing for our district? Put right sizing in quotes because that can mean a lot of things for our committee, right? And so again, getting back to those worksheets will kind of help us think about what does that mean. Understanding that in this district we have about 10,000 less students since about 10 or 20 years ago. We have 20,000 open seats right now. Financially, that is challenging, right? Because, and I try to talk about this a little bit, and I'm trying to get some like factual numbers from our planning committee. They're working on like an actual number for me about like what does it cost to run a school, right? Because if you, and I think a simple way of putting this is if we both own houses and we both have a $4,000 mortgage in each of those houses and we're renting the rooms, right? Think about kids in rooms. It's less cost for me as the homeowner to have as many rooms filled as possible. And in this house, if I'm the only one paying the bills, right, that's a lot of cost. So think about schoolhouses that way. It costs money to run them at base, regardless of who's in them or not. The hope is that we fill them enough that that cost per student becomes lower, and that we put as many resources in that space as possible. Because if we have a lot of small spaces with a bunch of resources, we're spreading our resources really thin. So that's kind of another way of thinking about like building attainment and us thinking about how we right size for our district. Yay, it's work time. So definitely please look back at those worksheets. We have chart paper, we have markers, and then we'll come back and report out about the guiding principles you guys developed. Very excited to hear. I'm sorry, we also have a guest that's gonna help us today.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Franklin, Senior Coordinator for Psychological Services. Good to see you all today. Thank you for being here. Thank you.
And we'll be coming around for questions and probing, as we always do.
We're good at coming up with questions.
Very good.
Come out with all kind of scenarios.
So how do we break it down since we're
Oh,
not
yes,
in our
please,
team?
thank you. I know, so that's where that thought part comes from. Like, go back to your building stuff and what were those big ideas that came out of those, and just throw them on the chart paper, or if anybody, somebody wants to just take notes and note paper, that's fine. So that's where I would start. What were your big ideas around buildings from your worksheets that you guys had in October? Oh, we got some. We can look up yours from October. In the worksheets? Yeah. Absolutely. It's in the Google Drive.
You getting them?
Yeah, I'm going to grab them now.
Okay, you got yours?
Let's go to October.
You got yours?
She's in my group.
Oh, you got it. Okay.
Thank goodness.
I was like, okay, you're gonna go grab this, because I don't remember.
That's why we have worksheets.
I did earlier today. Let alone October.
Okay.
You were.
You said yesterday, we're studying this morning.
I'm still in this morning. I don't know what happened to this morning.
Sure. Okay, so our big question from October was how can we ensure that families can enjoy supporting their students' extracurricular and co-curricular activities at their local high school? Lots of answers. Okay. The question, we're supposed to be in buildings. Oh no, we're in all.
Are we to work as one team? Are we working as one team?
You can develop them separately, that's fine. Because you guys also had kind of slightly different questions in October.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
but you could think broader than just your question in this part.
Yeah, yes, right.
We one group today.
Yeah, right, today, that's what we are.
One thought
Today,
tank.
yeah,
Just we breeze through it a little faster,
Okay.
hit the question.
right.
Okay. I don't even know where to start.
Right.
So we're looking at what we had, the question from October.
The October
And
question.
so, and we're trying to figure out what, like, some guiding principles.
We were looking at how,
Kind of different, oh, we did have
yeah.
different questions.
This group was looking at how to ensure that families can enjoy supporting their students with extracurricular and co-curricular activities at their local high school. And some of the things that we came up with were lower student engagement and academic performance. Students may feel less connected to their school community, which can lead to a higher dropout rate. The second thing, students can join school clubs and participate in activities, competitive events, and community service projects. There's a whole host of things around it.
No, I was saying, what was their question?
Actually, this was our question.
Okay,
How do we determine the right sizing for our district to adequately serve the current and projected student population? And so our group talked about the challenges with projected school numbers, given there's been a decrease, but then with all the building and people still moving into town, that some concern about closing, making closures now that then you have lead to overcrowding later if the student population increases in the future. And then some concern about the north part of the county has, deficits in the middle and high school, but surplus in the elementary. And so what happens if you focus on one grade level, what's the impact as those students get older? And so consolidations of schools. There was a question about whether or not we look at consolidating perhaps the middle and figuring out how to right-size the elementaries more evenly. So instead of necessarily closing, maybe you balance them out, the overcrowded ones and the undercrowded ones. And then transportation was an issue that came up in terms of forecasting, needing to increase transportation access, particularly if, and this started bleeding into the programs piece, but then what's the transportation access when you start right-sizing and changing, if you're changing programs at the same time? Any questions you guys have?
I think everybody had that question except one.
Oh,
Everybody had different ideas.
okay.
We came to similar.
We're the outliers.
So then the question we had, would that be considered the guiding principle, the original question?
So
No,
that,
you guys are gonna develop it based on.
we're gonna develop
the
Develop.
stuff that you guys did in that first, in October.
okay.
So what were the big
combining the
ideas
two.
from the transportation or the athletic part?
Oh, that was you.
No, we're reading from, just hearing it from y'all's, from what you guys had, because I don't even know what we had.
So a lot of our big ideas was how to create equity. Because we had barriers to entrance, you know, those who could afford
To get
to be
in.
able to attend, or transportation to the athletic events, schools that do and don't have stadiums.
Right.
How do you host various events in those circumstances? I'm trying to remember what else we discussed.
Yeah, I remember that.
Timing
Yeah.
of the
Right.
events.
Location for like parents who are working and transporting children and how they're getting back and forth.
And the accessibility is part of the equity. as
Right.
well.
Because we heavily highlighted the transportation issues, and then the work schedules and commitments that would exist that might interfere. And the suggestions here were scheduling events at various times to accommodate different family schedules, ensure facilities are accessible and comfortable, including parking, seating, and amenities, collaborate with local businesses and organizations to sponsor events. Because while that may be more of a barrier for our committee, in other parts of the county or in the districts that exist, they may not have that same barrier, but having those sponsorships maybe open some doors that are otherwise closed.
So
The
know the
ideas
cost.
that you guys came out with, that's what goes on in your think tank. So the ideas that each of the committees came up with, from that, it goes in your think tank, and then you guys can start ranking them.
Okay.
So the ideas are considered what you just said, like, okay. So are we doing all of them, or we're just picking some of the, we're rating them to get maybe like the top?
Yep, you're gonna get everybody's ideas
Okay.
first, and then you're gonna rank how it meets the.
So that's where the big paper would come in.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, who's,
Right.
who wants to be our writer, not me?
The big
I'm
paper.
right now, you might wanna use shorthand.
Yeah, okay, we got a volunteer, that's all that matters, we have a volunteer. So that's where the big paper comes in to write them all down.
Accessibility.
Got it, okay, we're putting two and two together.
Right, right.
We cooking with grease. We got some Crisco in here now.
All running.
Right, it was all good doing it. Everybody was in a different direction.
This is the coming together of our
Right.
teams.
This is also having a bunch of women with like 10,000 things going on. all at
And can
once.
do it.
And can do it. And can do it, holding a child.
Right, there you
like
go.
that.
Right, over the top, there you go, yes.
All right, shorthand some of the big ideas. What did you-
Okay, accessibility,
Yes.
Accessibility.
Accessibility,
Affordability.
affordability,
affordability.
equity,
Yeah.
Right.
And this was around athletics.
athletics, yeah.
And business partnerships.
Right,
Yes.
sponsorship.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, okay. This is all under what heading? Athletics.
Athletics. There was another piece, facilities.
Oh, yeah.
Not all schools have stadiums or, yeah.
So would that fall under the equity piece?
It could,
Yeah.
it could, yeah. Do you, but the question is, do you want to create equity as in every school should have the same amount of space? Or, is-
Right.
yeah, right. How
How
do
do you
you,
balance, right?
how do you balance that out?
And we'll be getting a, there is an athletic audit or something happening.
Right.
So I did ask for that, so we can see what their recommendations are, which will be helpful for when we, if we have to move some things around, like to put that on the map too, like, oh, here's what they're doing at these spaces. Because I do think they are, enhancing stadiums.
Yes.
I think that's a part of it.
Because we had a discussion around the existing stadiums and their ability to like host
I
concessions,
remember that,
given the
yeah,
age of the
right, the
facilities,
yeah,
and- yeah.
yeah.
So this is on.
Great. All right, another group, what's your big ideas?
So
for-
in, on the right sizing to serve the student and projected populations, we had, increased transportation access for specialty or choice programs in schools.
Sorry, say that again?
Increased transportation,
Maybe school choice transportation?
yeah, school choice grants, thank you.
I got you, we'll shorthand it. I got you.
And then we had no consolidation at elementary school, opting for smaller classes and better student-teacher ratio. So, I don't know how you wanna put that up there, but, that's a lot, but, and then we had, moving, including adding sixth grade back to middle, elementary school.
K through
Yeah.
six?
Yeah, so
Okay.
make elementary K through six again.
How does that go with the first one you just said?
Well, so if it's a two issues. So that deals with consolidating the middle schools would
Yeah.
just be 7 days. So where do you put
Right.
six? You have to put them in elementary.
Okay.
That's right sizing middle schools. We had it by grades, I'm not sure, I don't even remember why, but this is how we have it in here. So for elementary, we
When
were
they
like
started middle
smaller
school.
classes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right sizing by the, spreading them out between low capacity versus high capacity, so that there's fewer students in, and then you have, yeah.
Yeah,
I think our group thought similarly, but I think we said, what about doing K2,
3-5.
3-5,
Ah.
yeah, and mixing and matching.
I remember that, yeah.
That's a good one, you can, yeah, add
Yeah,
that up
That's
too.
why I did the ranking.
Yeah,
bands.
yeah.
Get it up there so we can see, yeah.
Yeah, our schools were like that when I
Yeah,
grew
I do
up.
remember.
Yeah.
They were broken up like that. you
And
know.
then we also had equity, but with respect to having, the choice programs at more schools
So
instead of
equity
fewer.
equals more school choice?
Yeah,
And when you say that, are you saying like meaning that the, like one program exists at more schools
Yes.
versus?
Right, it's
fewer
like one or two,
Okay.
only one, two, or two schools offer something, yeah.
Sure.
Makes sense. And I think my group said the opposite of
Oh, really?
that.
Yeah, I was wondering how that,
Because I'm in that group, and I say the opposite.
Ah.
because I think about how do you find the instructors, teachers, et cetera, to lead
Right.
those programs. They're already hard to find, but it doesn't mean, I mean, it's a barrier.
But are
You
they
have to-
really hard to find? We haven't been looking for them because we haven't. So, I mean, that was my vantage point. I mean, it's, I mean, I think a whole other conversation for another day, but I think
Sure.
that's what has led to the proliferation of charter schools. People are looking for something
right.
specific.
Right.
And so, yeah. So,
I agree.
There we go. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, no, I
No,
think,
that's
I think you're hitting the nail on the head.
yeah.
Harder to find
As a
that
child,
pay grade.
kid, person who had her kids.
There
in
you
church.
go.
That's,
It's
Yeah.
the pay grade. It's not, they're there.
Right.
It's the pay grade.
Right. That's
where
right.
they're gonna choose
That's
to,
right.
to go.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I'll say
Absolutely.
the rest of that, though, is
Yeah.
I think sometimes it's not that we're looking for a different program, it's just either not wanting what's in our current area because it's under-resourced, purposefully under-resourced, I
Yep.
will name the thing.
So let's put equity equals equal resources per school too.
Okay.
That's another good one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I.
Yeah.
that's a good one, yeah. Because we
Anything
know
else
that's
in your
not
group?
happening.
In your.
Sorry. No, not, but
The
it's,
discussion part's coming, anything else? Your list?
oh, this, yeah, they're in a different group. They're,
Okay,
this is
yep.
here.
What you
Yeah,
got?
we were very similar to the other groups.
Okay.
Consolidation was the key, and that's my team member. So she spoke already about the restructuring being a K through 7 situation, 8th graders, 9th graders together, and 10th through 12th grade together.
K through
Maybe have
7?
3 or 4 middle schools tops. For high school, one school could be closed. Yeah.
I thought they were.
Yeah, there
Somebody
was
said
a
McNair.
heated discussion.
K through
Coming back to it
7.
now.
Maybe because I have a kindergarten at K
Right.
through 7 seems a bit big.
We have one K-8 school that is not we have a few charters, but one
which K-8?
DAA is a K-8
Oh, really?
school.
Okay.
I'll just say it works, right? There are K-8 examples. And
I taught in a K-8.
Yeah.
It's been a long
Yeah.
time.
But I think to your point, if we make those, we have to kind of think about size, right?
Right.
So
Right.
K-8, but it's 800 kids, it's the same size, that's smaller than some of our middle schools.
That's
You know what I
right.
mean?
That's
So
right.
you can
Yeah.
do it and
Yeah.
you just have to
And
break
it's
it
how
up
you
in a
look,
way.
how
It's
they,
how it's
how they set up our
positioned.
school, yeah.
Correct.
Because I think about our school in Obama, it's an elementary school, but 900
900
students
kids.
in elementary.
900
That's a
kids.
lot
I
of
was-
kids.
A lot of kids.
Birmingham
They funnel
is
out of
that way.
elementary.
Yep.
Dresden's not to be that way.
Right.
Any new build, there's like a direction now from operations that any new elementary will be a 900 seater, any new middle school will be 1,200, any new high school will be 600.
Right.
Like there are
That's
some
too many.
some parameters that they're following. Now, I don't know where it came from.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's too many
our
kids.
conversation could possibly change.
Well, if you're gonna
I
put
can
it,
say that, but I also, when I was in Illinois coming up, I went to what was at the time the largest high school in the country. We had 4,000 students in our high school.
Me too.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
was-
but it worked.
It didn't
Yeah.
feel like it when you were in it.
Right.
Because again, it's still
Yeah.
like, it was
Right.
like the freshman wing, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
but you were a
break it up.
student, not as an
Right.
adult.
Right.
So it may have felt like that for the administration. They may have felt
They may have
like
felt
we are busting at the seat, like we
They may
are.
very well
As
have.
a child, we were just running around like
Right.
So
kicks
the
and
schools
giggles.
like that, there is something called ramp, which is how we allocate people, resources, to those schools. So if you have a 900 seater elementary, you got 4 APs, right? Like there are
Right.
some,
Right.
right? So
Yeah.
those-
Right.
again, I think even on those large scales, they still are broken down into smaller
Right.
divisions,
Entities,
if
yeah.
you will.
Right.
It would
Be
have
one
to
of those
be.
little mini
Yeah, oh,
schools.
Right, you
Right,
have to.
right, right.
Yeah.
To have that
Yeah.
on one,
And
two
it was,
people?
and it was tiered in, because I came in, I was the first the first 9th grade class to go all the way through. So when they opened it, they started with freshmen,
yeah,
freshman,
yeah.
sophomore,
Oh,
freshman,
they
sophomore,
just
junior,
kept
so they
adding.
phased
oh, they
them
kept
in.
at, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was,
There's a district in South Carolina like that, where I think they actually just split because one school had like 6,000 high schoolers and the other had 2, and so then they split, and now they both have 4, but they're all maxed out. and-
Right.
Wow.
But,
Yeah.
but yeah, I was like, that is a city.
Yeah, it is, it
Right.
is.
It's a
And
city.
it's larger than some college campuses.
Right.
The hormones in the building.
Right.
Oh, God.
Saying, like, as a child, it didn't feel that way, but for
And
an
the thing is,
adult.
things have changed so much now, I wouldn't want something like that in.
No, you wouldn't want
Mm,
that
oh,
many
gosh,
kids under
for
one
the-
building,
no.
and just
Mm-mm.
emergency
Things are so
sakes,
different.
like,
Well, and you were speaking about the number of empty seats anyways, right?
Right.
I don't know why in this district you would ever need a high school, that was,
We have so many.
yeah.
In terms of
and that's, well, and to make schools where they're holding 900 kids when you have 20,000 seats open, then what are you gonna do with the other buildings?
Yeah.
Like,
That's why I think
'Cause
this
you're running
idea
them
of
anyway.
redistricting is, you know, has merit, because there must be some way that you don't need to have all those trailers sitting
Right.
outside, and
Yeah.
there are buildings
That are
or seats
available.
that are open.
Right.
But
Because
how-
the cost,
For that school. I think our elementary school has to be, I wanna say, close to 400 students, and that's not a lot.
Yeah.
Not a lot compared to, I mean, we're right across the street, as a matter of fact. And, yeah, we are not filling seats. So what do we do?
Mhm.
It's sad, because at one time, this area used to be the it area.
yeah.
And to see how it has disintegrated is just so sad.
Well, is it that, or is it that the people are aging and they're not having
They're not
children, they're not moving
Right.
because where they're gonna go? You know, I mean, just if you sell your house, you can't go anywhere, and so they're staying in their homes, they're not having children, they've aged out from having children. You know, it's just a lot of factors as to, it could be the it area if they were to move out, and then younger families who are having children could move in. But there is a housing crisis in Atlanta where there's no vacant homes because people are staying in their homes longer.
Yeah.
And so,
There's that, and I'll take it from another perspective as well. I sit on community council, and a lot of communities are opposed to new development. Just coming- They
They
don't
are.
want the townhouse, they don't wanna see that growth. Well, that's where you get the
Right.
students that
That's
would
it.
have filled.
Right.
Young
Right.
kids.
And
that's,
so we're blocking ourselves out of that
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah,
Right.
we do that a lot.
and it's, apartments don't foster
Right.
large families.
And you have a transient population, they'll start in the school for how long?
Yeah.
Right.
And off to the next.
Yeah.
And then the other layer is school choice. I have a whole neighborhood of kids that don't go to Obama, which is like.
That's the same circumstance
Yeah.
in my neighborhood. I mean,
Mine too.
I can tell you which households send their kids over to Obama.
A lot of kids don't go to constraints.
Right,
Yeah.
no.
All right, did your group have anything different, or were you?
Yes, so we had the program schools.
Okay.
Our big ideas include replicating successful models, such as Corewood. We also have expanding successful and necessary programs. That looks like the Early Learning Center that provides the community with a necessary resource for preschool education. That should be expanded and replicated elsewhere.
It actually is.
Yeah.
They have like
Yeah, they have.
12 or 14 expansion sites now within the elementary schools. Because my son is at
When?
this year,
Oh.
because,
They expanded pre-K3 this year.
right, because my son is at Early Learning Center, so I'm all on that over there,
A few
buddy.
years ago, it did
Yeah,
not
it was
exist
just
in
those,
the-
it was that and
Yes.
Collinwall, I believe, is
We have.
the Core, is it Corewood? Corewood.
Corewood.
Those are the only two early learning centers, but now they've,
Yeah, they have one at Bob, is that Corwood South?
And Rainbow.
Oh.
Bob Mathis.
What's the name of
They
this
have
topic?
Corwood at Rainbow?
Program areas.
Thank you.
Pre-K.
Program schools, sorry.
Corwood?
but the guy who was over ELC, he's now running the early learning division for DeKalb County. And they've expanded into a lot of different elementary schools because it was so successful. And parents need that, like the cost of daycare being the same as a mortgage, when you can send your children to a pre-K at 3 years old.
Yeah.
My issue is, then you have, it's almost, they're being treated like a daycare and not like a school. And so maybe because my children were in Montessori, so I'm used to a more hands-off,
right.
like, or, you know, let them learn approach. You get a lot of coddling. Even to this morning when I'm dropping my son off, you still have parents carrying their children into the school. And so I'm on the pact, And I'm like, hey, how can we stop? You know, just tell parents, no, these kids need
Yeah,
to
the
walk
school-
into the
right,
building.
yeah, right.
And the principal's like, no, you know, they're our babies. I'm like, they're not actually,
We used
because
to.
this is my baby,
Right,
and he's
right.
not a baby.
And
They can do
like,
both.
Right,
Yeah.
we used to stop them after about 2 weeks. I worked in
Exactly.
elementary. Yeah, right, about 2 weeks. And
Right.
after that, we're stopping parents at the hallway.
Let them
Okay,
walk
let them
in.
come on.
Let them
Right.
They will be fine.
Yes.
And parents,
No,
you know, we have to walk out with the parents because they're crying.
See,
Yeah.
we can walk into their
Right, yeah.
classroom, but they are literally carrying children
Yeah,
to
yeah,
the classroom, and
No,
I'm
we
like,
stopped
this
that
needs
after
to
about 2
stop.
weeks, that was it.
Right, and I've mentioned it. I'm like,
Yeah.
how can we, on our first
Yeah.
PAC meeting, I'm like, how can we stop the parents from
Yeah.
carrying their babies
At the
into
door.
these? And he's
At the
like,
door.
no, you know, we want them to. It's a lot of separation. And I'm
Nah.
like, they're in
No,
school.
thank you.
I have a
Thank
child
you.
here too. He's
Thank
3,
you.
and he is walking in this door because we've been up for an hour. So they're capable.
They're
Some
very
of them are still
capable.
asleep, and I'm like, how you sleep?
Yeah.
We've been up for
What I
an
talked
hour.
about was like the, how we're tracking the progress and success of some of these programs so that we can accurately replicate them.
Right.
So like, for example, if the original Early Learning Center didn't have that, but the expansions are not following the model, these are
Right.
different programs. This is not the same program that we intended to replicate. And so if we're expanding or replicating programs, how are we staying true to fidelity of the program versus like just hiring people and then here's the program, just do it. And so those are big questions that we had, both for early education, but also for the high school kids, because we also wanted to reimagine the CTAE offerings and work-based learning.
Snaps.
Come on.
I think we all are.
I know, and Dorian couldn't be here tonight, but last week, I think that came up around some guiding principles as well. And essentially, what I heard her say, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm, remember, is that in most districts, your CTAE houses your large industrial types of programs, and then everything else is at the schools, right? Like there has to be some kind of rationale for why we need this building. If we're just duplicating what's at the schools and we're transporting them,
Why?
what are we doing? So I think there is some thought around trying to reimagine that from her department anyway, but that's a good question. Or good.
One of the conversations we had around that were trying to just understand how the programs at each of the schools were decided upon. So we noticed discrepancies in schools in the north versus in the south. And we had some conversations around what does equity look like? Does it look like all the schools get the same programs? Do we say, one of the things we talked about was, well, certain kind of students want these kinds of things, but if they're not exposed to certain kind of things, how would they know they don't like it? So, just trying to reimagine how we introduce programs to different schools. We wanted to continue successful programs like Eagle Woods, Shadow Rock Center, and DeKalb Alternative.
I think you have that, success.
But I think even Shadow Rock Center enrollment dropped so drastically. Lithonia, off of Kingsway.
Does anyone know what the contributors were to that enrollment drop-off?
I don't know.
It's for specialized.
Yes, the
It's
center.
a very specialized center for students who are in special ed, so it's the most restricted environment. And so our goal is to not keep students in that restricted environment. And so we do have a transition plan in place to help them transition out to get back into the typical school setting. So it's the most restricted.
Yeah, because it's doing what they're supposed to be doing if their enrollment is dropping.
Right.
And then we wanted to expand successful program like the International Student Center. We have this influx of migrants, at least for now. So trying to figure out how to best support them, even if they're not in the concentrated neighborhoods, across the district, where else are they living? And how can we support them while they're there?
How are students going to the international? What directs them to be in that setting?
International Student Center, well, when they first come in, they do the intake there, so we can see their language acquisition skills and what type of supports they will need in order to know if they're going to go to the school that's known as the Midway and go there to get some additional, just basic English to be able to communicate instruction, and then go out to the regular schools. So they do an assessment to get their language acquisition skills, And then if there's any additional supports, then we, of course, go through the supports needed in section 504, MTSS tier 3, or anything else that we needed. And, I know that a lot of the students tend to be within the same community, so they can have a sense of family and community when they're going out to school. So that's why there's a large number in the Clarkson area, but they are expanding out, which is great,
So that center is just like a transitional space.
It's a transitional space temporarily to kind of help get you up to par. And especially for a lot of the older kids, you imagine just coming and placed in a high school, and you don't know how to say restroom,
Right.
just basic things, and so it's just kind of help get in there.
Okay, thank you.
That's it.
All right.
There is something else for that athletics piece, and I couldn't think of off the top of my head, but you just said it, and it triggered the thought of that building that sense of community, having some sense of ownership over the activities and participation, and for parents.
Because it generally drives the community.
Because especially like if you consider the number of people being served, at least in my area, by a Title I school, you're dealing with the transient population. How do they feel connected to what is happening at that school?
And I think a lot of that is just communication, because there's English, everything is in English as soon as you walk in the door, and, you know, not multiple languages of just basic information at a door for whoever walks in the door.
And create realistic opportunities for people to engage. I mean,
Right.
everything can't happen when school gets out at 2. Maybe there's an opportunity at noon. Maybe there, you know, there has to be a mechanism to include people who have different encumbrances on their lives.
For the building sense of community piece, and I don't know if this would really matter, but say like I'm in the Bob Mathis community area. And so once the kids, you know, grew out and moved on, there was like a disconnect between the parents that still lived in the community, and especially my community, because Bob Mathis is literally in my community. And those parents would have wanted to come back and be involved in the school, even as a volunteer. But that whole group has just kind of been just left out because there's no way for them to get information. If it's a meeting or something, they might see something when they pass by. But like you said, like a sense of community, there are so many people that have a love for how their child, you know, went through that school. Southwest DeKalb, of course, you know, that's this community. So there's such a love for it, but then once the kids move on, the people, like I said, are still here, but they still have a love for it, and there hasn't been a defined way to tap into that base that could still come through and offer support through the school, whether it was financial or whether it was just actually physical support.
And even those who never had children in the
Yeah,
school.
right,
I mean,
yeah.
How do you
Yeah.
tap into it? Because they
Right.
still care about the
They
community.
still care, right, and being a part of the school, it just kind of helps with the community as a whole, and gives you something to hold on to.
But I also think a lot of the schools are not utilizing technology in the manner, because I have, my oldest son is in kindergarten, but he's in an APS school. When I tell you the communication is like that of a Fortune 500 company, from the principal using apps to the Facebook group with the
Right.
parents, I mean, anything you wanna know, it runs across your mind. You type it in that search bar for that school, and some parent has talked about it, or if not, you can post the question and you're gonna get the response.
Yeah.
And I think
People are
that they're engaged, but
Right.
that's because they open the doors, you're able to come in, you're able to talk, you're able to walk in and ask questions and volunteer at any time.
Yeah.
And that helps build a sense of community.
Yes, yeah.
Those mechanisms for connection are key, because otherwise, you end up with a scenario that I'm seeing on a daily basis, is a bunch of people who have no clue
Right,
what's happening inside of that building.
right.
Right.
Outside of maybe what their scholar comes out and tells them,
Right.
but they are otherwise
Right.
completely disengaged.
I think that makes me think about this, I went to school in Illinois as well, and my experience of it was that the schools were the hallmark of the community. So it was not restricted to just the kids.
Right.
And so for example, that in a national population, the school is a place where the parents get their GED classes.
Right.
They get
Offered
their
other things.
employment
Right.
opportunities, employment orientations. You know, when I was in grad school, we would go into these schools and provide some orientation around adjusting to the US. And so I don't know if part of our reimagination can include the role that we want the schools to play in the community. versus just like a learning center.
I think it has to.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if we're going to see any of these things come to fruition, you have to bring in that other element.
Right, I agree.
Well, it's just like, it used to be the largest place kind of in your community,
Mhm.
so it's
Right.
like everything next to a
Right.
church was held at
Which is
school.
That's
right.
So then everything was there, and then it brought the community
Mhm.
into the building to even see, like, first you gotta put your eyes on it, right? You gotta see what's going on, and if a parent or a grandparent, they saw, oh, something's, this looks run down, this, next thing you know, some guys were out there, they had wood and they sawing and fixing and building.
Right.
But you have to be
Right.
in the building
Right.
to even see what's going on, and now nobody can even, you can't get
even
past,
get
I
in-
can't even
in the
take
front
my
door.
lunchbox to my child's classroom.
Right.
And so, you gotta take those barriers down and stop being afraid, even though, it's a lot going on, but letting people into the building.
Yeah, it was scary.
It is.
Yeah.
Letting
It
it serve
is.
as a
But
community.
there's a way to.
There's a way to do it.
Yeah.
After hours
You
or,
don't
you know.
don't have to shut it completely
No.
down. There's a way to.
Well, I
There are
also
mechanisms for
often
making it a
wonder,
community
like,
hub.
someone mentioned about learning about what is working well, what has been effective.
Right.
So within the district, there are schools that are not fortresses. And so how the problem is that you don't have any means by which another school can learn from that.
Right.
So, I mean, my children both graduated from DSA. No, we built the sets,
Yeah.
Saturday, Saturday,
Right.
we're at the school.
Right.
It was very much,
Yeah.
and if we hadn't been, they wouldn't have had the budget to do
That's
what
right.
they
Right, correct,
did.
correct,
And
correct,
so
right.
I was thinking, how does that get though to another school? Instead, you tend to look askance, like, oh, well, over there, they can do that, but we can't. I always, I went to the school board many times in terms of different meetings because I was like, why do you have such high achieving schools in some cases? And then you don't translate that to someone
other
else.
schools.
It seems very unequitable to me.
Yeah.
Since it's not that, oh, there's certain places where very special children
No.
are, or families that are so well educated that they,
Right.
no, actually, there are some practices that go on in schools that
Right.
lead to student
Right.
success.
That's right.
We always talk, administration after administration in the district about, we are scholar-centered, we are data-driven. These are quite, nice slogans, but I would like to see how. How is this gonna actually be transmitted? So that's why I'm excited about this process, to see, is there some way that we can say, yeah, over here, it's not a closed shop.
Right.
They still, of course, have to have security
Right,
and all of
right,
those
right,
things, you
right.
don't random people off the street.
Right.
But what are they doing to make sure
I
that
think,
that's happening?
to your point though, I think there's layers to it.
Mhm.
At my son's formal middle school that I'm still very much involved in because I love it. We recently started a PTO, which was a very challenging process that we did not complete until, my son's ninth grade now, but here we are. But what I learned through that process was some people are just not following the district rules around how you manage things.
Right.
And so you can do
That
things
part.
like.
That part.
Right.
That
No, you're right.
Around money though, I
No.
said around like just practices.
Right.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about. Right, I know
Whole
exactly.
volunteer policy, I'm like,
Right.
Yeah.
I had to get a whole
Right.
grant just to
Yep.
be here
Right.
on Tuesday to give the teachers some ice cream.
Right.
And some people are like, oh, no, but I'm here every day and I do X, Y, and Z and I work at the front office and I help with this and I
Right.
work with that. We have a whole committee that does X,
That
Y,
part.
and Z. And I'm like, but the rules.
Right.
And they're like, that's nice.
Right.
But then you have this community that looks beautiful and wonderful and like, oh, that's how you're accomplishing all those
Right.
things. Because you're not having to say, hey, parents,
Right.
I really want you to be involved, but before you can be involved, I need you to drive clear across town.
Yeah, we had to
between
do all
9
that.
and
Get our
2.
IDs, take our.
Right.
Take some time off of work,
Right.
get fingerprinted.
Should be
then
a way
go
to make
back
that more easy
to
and
pick up
easier
your
to be
badge.
done.
Like,
Yeah.
no.
I would even do that if my school would allow me to do that.
Right.
Mine won't even allow me to do that.
I mean, I think about what it was for me coming up and that, oh, surprise, my mom is in the hallway. Because she was always in the hallway.
Yeah.
But, you don't have that now.
But to your point about like examining what's working, and earlier you were talking about reaching out to organizations to and get them involved in the school community. My son's school had like a fundraising in October, and I just thought it was like your regular old fundraiser where you just raise a few bucks and.
No, ma'am.
And then they told us they raised $74,000 in a matter of 21 days. And
Wow.
the things that we were going to do with the money, and we followed. I went to a meeting last week and they told us the things they were doing for the money
Right.
and how they were supporting teachers.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I'm just like, wow, yeah, the
Right.
teachers want to come to work because
Right.
they have access to
Yes.
resources.
Right.
They can get creative with the kids. The
Mhm.
kids enjoy learning. The kids want to come to school because they enjoy what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there are some things that are working. And one of the things that I think I learned at our last meeting was the principal has a lot of power. And
Oh,
that's,
yes.
Well, that's where that part
I
comes
don't
in.
know.
The not following, they're
Some of
choosing
them
what they
choose
wanna
what they wanna.
follow.
Yes, and so
Yeah,
if
that happens.
you can build your power. I think the new principal used to be at the district office, so she has a lot of knowledge and she's figured out how to, navigate things. And I imagine that other principals who maybe not as motivated or for whatever reason aren't leveraging those opportunities. And so the students unfortunately have to sit with the
Suffer.
consequences.
Yeah,
Right.
that's a shame.
It is.
Well,
All right, so you gotta rank, how many,
Um,
which one of these is really meeting that question
No,
about
they're all
right side?
amazing.
No, right.
They're all amazing.
I mean, all the various forms of equity, I mean, there's.
Right.
Right.
The questions on it, the bullet points, yeah.
Okay.
When we say affordability, what do we mean by that?
Well, I think that one was based on the sports, athletics, and so
Can everyone-
Charging for
charging,
Oh,
admission
affordability
to,
for the community.
Right.
for community members or parents, or even, I mean, if you have a household,
If
you
you're on
know,
a team and being able to afford the,
all the
all the
stuff.
gear that's
all of the
needed.
gear that's
Oh
needed.
my God, I didn't
Right.
realize it was so expensive.
Yeah.
And so like if you have
You
a.
gotta pay your other game.
Right.
and then you gotta pay.
A lot of the schools don't have a proper sports
Hey, I got a
facility.
sock, that's
So
worth
you
something.
don't, you don't have a concession stand to raise money.
Right.
You don't have the mechanisms to raise money, so then they wanna charge admission as a means of raising money.
But they
to
also
help
don't
support-
wanna rent out the facilities they have,
And
when they should.
Yeah,
there's,
see.
Right.
there's,
Yeah.
but that's even when they
Our
have the
schools have
facility.
tried to rent them and they've told us yes sometimes and no sometimes, and it's not being used. I'm like, you can make some money here.
What
Why are you
They
not
had a
using it?
program many years ago where they went around to the schools to see who had what that could be rented out, like if you had a baseball field, if you had a gym. I can't remember what
I
that
bet you some
program was
schools are being
called.
rented out.
Huh?
I think recently.
Yeah,
so that-
but it's been a while ago for me, I mean, since I was at Shadow Rock when they started doing that, and it's been some years ago, where they went around to different schools, every school didn't have the
Right.
facilities. So people who wanted to rent, like the cafeteria for their private meetings, or for banquets, or so forth, and if you had a gymnasium, I think that was a way to kind of make money, and then also, but I've never heard any more about that program or where it went, or even the name of it.
How much was the athletics team? They in my building.
Yeah. Yeah, because like Hoffer Stadium, and then like we had a gym, and so that was on there, the field. So Cub Scouts, it was a way to bring in other organizations to be part of, right, and to raise money. And I remember also, and this has been many years ago, when the commissioners for DeKalb County was suggesting some of the schools that had pools or gyms for the summertime.
Right.
To have, it's like, why do we need to build another building when
Right, we
there's a
have
school right down the street with the gym?
Camps with, like,
Yes.
after school.
Right, yeah, especially if the
prices.
school wasn't, doing that, because I think there's a number that there's supposed to be so many 100,000 people, supposed to be a pool, there's some master plan for the county. And so they were gonna use that as, okay, hey, we have a pool here, we have a pool here. But again, that just, I don't think a while back, they were not, I guess, apt to be more in partnership with each other. I think they are more now. Yeah, they are more, yeah, and that's what's happening, and that's what's happening. Yeah, because, yeah. So that, it may be something to be considered now.
So maybe each of you guys can go up and mark 3 of them.
Are we trying to do this just for one subject or for
Right.
all?
Nope, because those top 3 are gonna be eventually become guiding principles. And know that a lot of these can come right
together,
as you
yeah.
think about a large guiding principle.
Yeah.
What top 3 is gonna lead you to
So what do you put
us
checks by?
reading?
Equity gonna be
So if we
one-
say
one-
equity, we can do equity across the
Across the
various.
board, right,
Yeah.
yes.
You're gonna make a large guiding principle.
I was gonna say, put the check
mark.
or
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
can do it as a group, or
So
you can.
Maybe we need to pull out of these groupings that we have something that we
No, because we can,
bigger that we can
Themes,
weigh
look
in
at
on.
you.
Yeah.
or do we just wanna
Things.
break the top, like the ones that have the most, then break those down.
Well, see, what I'm seeing across some of them is a repeat.
Yeah.
Something that is important under athletics, under right sizing and
Oh,
program.
But it's, and it's still all equity based,
Bring that
yes,
over.
yeah.
Right.
Like
Can I
equity.
just
Create-
say,
yeah.
I'm so excited you guys are using chart paper, because you're like, they use the chart.
Chart paper and different colors. She's got colors.
She's gonna be the
Yeah.
rest of the week.
Yeah.
All right, what's your first thing?
Gotta pull equity
Yeah,
across.
it's gotta be equity.
Pull equity.
And remember, equity and equality are different.
Yes, they are.
Okay? For sure.
And I
What's
think
your other
that
thing you guys are seeing?
successful modeling, because that goes across,
Replicate the success.
yeah, the
Replication
replication of
expanded.
successful. Yeah, replication and expansion of successful models.
Ooh, okay.
Put it together.
I think that's the community, because accessibility can go under that. There was that affordability.
Right.
Right, before, all that can go into the community.
Yep, and when you talk about,
Opportunities for people to engage can go under that.
Yeah.
and like the whole concept of tracking progress in
All
order
right,
to.
we're
figure
done
out
here.
what's
All
right.
And we ended early, right?
Not making it to the guiding principle, but it's you're almost there.
Well, and I was gonna say that tracking progress actually falls under that whole replication and expansion, because in order to do it, you have to track what, right, so that, yeah, those all come together.
It's just one, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, you guys got 3 big buckets then.
Yeah.
So now how do you make that bucket into a guiding principle that is action-oriented, aligned with the vision, and adaptable? Think, again, we're talking about buildings at this time, and you're gonna do the same thing when we talk about programs, the same thing when we talk about, boundaries. And remember, the guide rails are large, because we gotta do a lot within those guide rails, right?
This is, and these 3 A's are based on buildings.
Buildings.
Okay.
So,
Brick and
as
mortar.
it relates to equity, what is a guiding principle that's action-oriented, aligned with the vision, and adaptable?
4 buildings.
For buildings, based on all this stuff y'all just put down.
Here's a thought.
Just throw stuff out there. Y'all, just throw stuff out there, you'll decide.
Yeah, right, it'll stick, it'll land.
Each building should have access to equity resources based on the needs of the community.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm
Right.
Those snaps and oohs really.
Right.
Really hit it
Keeps
over there
us
today.
motivated, right.
Be quiet over here.
Lets us know we're on the right track.
Yeah.
We might say something harebrained and
Right.
there's no ooh.
I know, right.
Rapping over it. Like, ooh.
Sorry, it's tiny.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, read it again.
Each building should have access to equitable resources based on the needs of the community.
Okay, that's it.
That is
That's
it.
it, that's it, that says it in a nutshell.
Right.
Yeah, okay,
Number 1,
Done.
okay. All right.
an expansion of successful models. And know that that's gonna cross between programs and buildings,
Right.
so that's a nice one, because you're gonna start to see this stuff merge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And think of the stuff that goes under there, because you wanna make sure that some of that language is in there too, so what was around.
Yeah, so you had tracking
Yeah.
progress.
So consistent metrics should be adopted so that successful models can be identified and replicated or expanded.
Well, give us our snaps, come on.
Right, right.
It might be back there groaning, I don't know.
The excitement is exploding over there.
I can hear the whoosh of air.
Exploding.
You have no idea, because when we go in front of the board and I like talk about the process, like people, I don't think they understand the process. Like, we didn't just sit at a table and throw
Right.
stuff at the wall, like, no, we sat and learned for 4 months. Then we developed principles that's gonna guide our process on making these recommendations, and that's how we got, right? So it's all,
I'm with
it's
you.
all coming together. It's coming
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when we start looking at stuff, I'll say, so how does that vision, how is that in your guiding principle, right? So tell me about Coralwood only, we're talking about all the programs, so what are all the programs that we're replicating? What are all, right? Very good, that's
So read both of them together, start at equity and then the
Yeah,
green.
so equity, each building should have access to equitable resources based on the needs of the community.
Okay,
So that was number one.
All right.
Number two is replication and expansion of successful models, and we know that that's gonna be inclusive of consistent metrics being adopted for
Okay.
success and progress.
all right.
That
Okay,
includes-
so then the community part, and I'm just gonna tie back into the first one.
What's your second one? I
The needs of the community.
We gotta make it BPM.
Oh, we gotta add more to number two?
Yeah.
You wanna make it?
Well,
I'm
not
sure I'm a-
Division and
Alarm.
adaptability.
I heard adapt over here.
Yeah.
Somebody said something like adapt.
mm-hmm,
I don't know what you said.
yeah, we gotta adapt it up there.
She
Yeah,
did.
consistent
She
metrics.
said,
You said something about
She said
adapt.
You
Not
did.
that's
Did I say
but
adopted?
Adopted or
something
adapted?
Like
Yeah.
that's your action.
No, in the second
The
one.
second one?
So
the second
consistent metrics being adopted.
Adopted.
Oh, adopted, okay.
And in talking about buildings, are we talking about, well, I guess this is gonna be programs, look, the locations of the programs, we'll discuss in a different setting, okay. System metrics being adopted,
What, to align with the vision?
Your tracking progress is gonna
Mhm.
probably be a little bit more in your program end,
Mhm.
right? When we
Yeah.
start talking about
Mhm.
programs a little bit, unless you guys were talking about tracking it for building purposes, right? Otherwise, that's gonna go in your program bucket eventually. We'll get to that one with programs. The successful model is a good one, but what are we talking about? If that's program specific,
it is.
I thought we were talking about buildings though, right?
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
so she
Right,
wants us to
right.
bring
But
it
you
back to
still have
building.
to,
So I think from the building perspective, this is where we talk about the consolidation or expansion, or like, we've gotta look at, what is the data showing across the buildings, such that there can be replication, expansion in a, I don't know, in a broader
you're
way.
getting there. I'm
Where
liking
it's,
it.
yeah, so it's, I mean, I'm trying to think about it from a building perspective, because we're
Yeah.
trying to, like, this is where we're getting into what makes sense in terms of how are the grade breakdowns, right? What is middle school
Mhm.
So your
consist
grade
of?
breakdowns is gonna
Yeah.
get you to that building,
That's right,
right?
that's
So
right.
you're gonna have to tie in that
And
grade
you have to have
breakdown
the
and
data,
the buildings
understanding
and make
that,
that
that's
action
right.
oriented.
Yeah.
And then does
I
it
don't know how to
become,
say all that in a shorter sense, but.
You're getting there.
does it then become replication, expansion, and consolidation? Because some of the programs
Yeah.
may be,
And/or
Yeah.
So what if we
consolidation.
go with, so a consistent metric being adopted to make determinations regarding replication, expansion,
And
and
consolidation.
Consolidation.
Or consolidation.
Uh-huh.
And or
Yeah,
consolidation.
yeah,
Now we're talking about buildings.
uh-huh.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
You've got buildings with empty space, those with overflow.
And
How do
your consistent metric brings you back to equity,
Right.
right? So
That's
regardless
right.
if you in the north, central, or south,
Right.
here's the
The
metric
metric.
we're using to determine
Mhm.
X, Y, or Z.
Right.
But then if
All right,
the
we're gonna be
administration
equitable
is
now.
choosing what they're
Yes.
doing. If the administration
Here's
is
your
choosing
equity.
what they're doing,
All right, what about
it
community?
doesn't matter where they are.
Right.
I
Since
really,
we're-
the fact that someone said the school becomes the hallmark of the community, I felt like that needs to be central to whatever we say, because I think that's one of the reasons, a lot of the
Yeah, that's the
challenges that have
building,
been
right,
stated,
right.
it's because we don't think of the school as the hallmark of our community.
And
So,
perhaps if people did, they wouldn't be so many school choice applications.
That's
right.
Right. Somewhere.
That's
Right,
That's
right.
Because
Right.
Because we lost that.
Right?
Yeah.
And if you have
Right.
a where they're equal,
Yeah.
and it is the hub for all
We
of
lost
these other
that.
activities,
Yeah.
then you're not seeking to then put your child
Right.
elsewhere.
Somewhere else.
Yeah.
So
We-
is
'Cause
there
you've
something
been in the building.
physical-
Yeah, about the
like,
building,
is there
yeah.
something about the structure of these
Yeah.
buildings that's the problem, or is it the culture and climate of the buildings that's the problem?
It
Could be both,
think
because
so.
you've got the aesthetics, upkeep of the various,
Okay.
you know, buildings, if I'm
Right.
sending my
Well, we're
child.
already talking about, right, if you don't even have access to the
And
building,
then there's
right?
that.
I mean,
Right.
so the school's hosting a play, everybody, aunts, uncles, grandmas is
Yeah.
coming. Why is it that we can open it up for that, but we can't open it up
Yeah.
for reading to kindergartners and for
Right.
other things, right? So,
Like I said, the upkeep of it,
So
because
you've got the
and
building
air
access,
conditioning.
the
yes.
building maintenance,
Yeah.
Even just space, you have a room, you
or
have a building for
amenities.
500 kids or 800 kids, but your
Right.
auditorium or cafeteria can only hold
50 people.
400
But-
people.
Right.
But it was
So
built
how
like
do
that.
you be involved if you
Yeah.
have to rotate?
1930.
Yeah, right, it was built like that. Some of the schools, like Bob Mathis was built in the 70s.
Right.
You know, and so, I mean, I know they went in and did an upgrade, even with the restrooms to make them ADA compliant. Then when, of course, when they put in the Coralwood South, when they built that part, but yeah, you're talking about aging, the air conditioning units and heating and all that kind, yeah, and,
But if we're thinking about the community, don't we think like the school design should reflect that this is the hallmark of our community? And that would be through all the things that you all are saying, right? Like
Right.
with adequate space for the community to come in, with beauty that is attractive to the community.
especially the landscape, that's,
Oh, yeah, don't get me started.
yeah.
So you don't like ant mounds on the playing field?
Or
I
the
don't like them
little,
on the sidewalk when I'm
or
walking
the little
my child.
yellow jacket holes all in the yard and
Because
stuff.
of the space
It's the
itself.
facilities too. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the existence of the facilities
Yeah.
within the
Facilities
building.
and access.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
it
I
goes
think it
back
is.
to the sense
I
of
think it is.
community, because then, guess what, I could come out with a blower, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like a grandfather could see, you know what, I don't like the way the sidewalk look when
Right.
I'm walking my grand. Soon as school start, I'm coming back with the blower.
And see, and I remember, and I don't know if they do it as much now, like certain times of the year, you know, I don't know when they did it, but they have the tiger paws for Southwest painted in the streets, you know, go all the way down Wesley Chapel, you know, so that was even exciting, even though I wasn't there, you know, it's like, this is our school, and so this is our community, and
Right.
it made the community piece of it. And that Bob Mathis brought in, once they, you know, the new person coming in, made it such a kid-friendly environment. The person before, it was just more like institutional, but they actually had them paint the halls in on the sidewalks. They had things, it was just so kid-friendly with the decor and everything, and so that was just kind of drew people in, but it really did bring that community piece. You know, when you just felt like I said, I didn't even have a child over here, but you know, I'm in Southwest, this Southwest camp, what y'all
Right.
talking about? You know, y'all don't come for Southwest camp, you know, we go to meetings like, oh, y'all lost our mind.
And we need to be tracking how, with the schools, this kind of takes us back to the whole replication expansion piece again, but with the schools that have successful community engagement,
What
are
happened?
we
Yeah.
tracking what is working
Right,
for them
right,
and then replicating
right.
that at
Yeah.
the schools
I bet
that
you they're
don't have
bringing
it?
parents in, I bet you parents are allowed to get in that door. Because
Oh,
like
yeah.
you said over there, the parents were building the stages, they were,
Yeah.
if you
Yes,
cannot
right.
get in the building, you cannot assist the building, like,
And I remember too, again, when I was at Shadow Rock, when you said that, it just brought back really fond memories early on in the early 90s, where we, parents was just all over the building.
Right.
We had PTA, they were in there, you know, if we were performing, they were building the sets and so forth. And it was so great at one time for Thanksgiving, our principal, and this is before all the, you know, you gotta go be fingerprinted and all this kind of stuff. We had like 600-700 kids in the building. She had volunteers to cover every classroom, cafeteria, PE, you're talking about 30-40 classrooms, so that the entire staff could eat together for Thanksgiving. But that was just right, and I've never seen it done since then, you know, that you had that much parent participation that cared about, you know, about their school.
So we're getting some good language
Yeah.
up
I'm gonna
here.
bring us back.
But
Yeah.
So, based off of a lot of the conversations that y'all were having, and considering that we need to be action-oriented, a lot of provision and adaptable, I took about the access piece, about how many, does the space hold, like the cafeteria, the auditorium, does the school design reflect the needs of the community? And came up with schools are designed, built, and run with the needs of both the students and the community in mind.
And I might put comma, making them the hallmark of the
Okay,
community.
Yeah.
You know,
Because if the community buys into it, then
yeah.
you know,
I actually,
and that's kind of what happened here. We were very protective. When they used to have meetings, back when the headquarters used to be over there off of North Decatur Road, and they would have meetings, and when things came up about Bob Mathis, in fact, that was one of the things they said, it was like Bob Mathis was very sleepy area, but if you touch them, the community just,
wakes up.
yeah. So, yeah, because they bought in, because it was the hallmark of the community.
I
Yeah.
think in that, there need to be mechanisms for evaluating facilities that foster that sense of community.
Yeah.
Because people stay away from those areas, they're like, you know what, everybody on that street watching.
Y'all about to, y'all
Thank
about
you.
to massage this one again, 'cause
We
that-
are,
yeah.
Right, that's
It
good.
needs,
Yeah.
it's gotta be built into
Right.
that,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, when
Let's
people
see.
see that the community cares, then they stay away from that community.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Well, it's the
they
same thing.
stay,
there's a
when,
way to do it.
Yeah.
you know, they just,
But it's the same thing with crime, it's called the broken window theory,
Right.
you know, and if people don't care about things, and things start breaking out, that has a tendency to draw
right.
the wrong element in.
So it
All right,
said,
teacher, what you got?
schools are designed, built, and run with the needs of both the student and the community in mind, making them the hallmark of the community. and I don't know how to add in.
I think you start with that. You start with the whole mechanisms for evaluating facilities that foster community and engagement, such that schools are designed, built, blah, 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 and it,
So say your first part again.
mechanisms,
What are you doing? What's the action?
Evaluating, is it?
yeah, evaluating mechanisms.
Do you need another sheet?
Or I guess you're evaluating the facilities, evaluating facilities that foster community engagement,
Okay.
such that schools are designed, built, and run
Basically using that
with the
information.
needs of the community in mind. Making them a hallmark. Yes, yes.
I.e.
Right. Yeah.
And I've served on
Right.
these lost advice. I know
Yeah.
that you can make a lot of, but they don't. It doesn't change anything. I'm like, the people don't love these
guess
schools.
Right, they lost
they're-
that,
they
yeah.
each
There
think
should
about
be
their
mechanisms.
1.5
Yeah, when they started
children
bringing in
and
the
trying to get
MTM
into
and
the
the
years.
opportunity and then a good, I mean, and no shade, because that's where you want the best for your kids, but
Right.
you start pulling
Alright,
people
so you
away,
guys all
then
have to
folks
put
live
these
in the
your-
community and not a part of the community.
Right.
worksheets
Oh, I know.
Okay.
For your teams, just put
Yeah.
the ones that we came up with in your worksheets, we'll read them
Oh,
back.
right now.
Okay.
And then we have to talk about how they align, what is it addressing, how they align to the SAP vision, and there's one more part after that.
All right, so I'm,
She changed the color on us.
She did.
Go down, I'm sorry. She said,
Well,
that's the one.
because I don't even think I'm logged in.
And I would,
Keep going, keep going.
You guys have the Wi-Fi?
and I think we
I
can
don't
just say
think I have
to
it.
design,
I think it's,
So you're gonna put your,
because I couldn't get it to come on.
evaluate
You're gonna do for a
facilities
team
that
board?
foster
Oh.
community to design,
let me show you.
build,
the
and
worksheet.
run schools, like that's the action piece, right? So
Yeah.
take that evaluation and then design,
I have to log in.
Design.
I got it.
run and build them
Yep.
to do that. So like that's the action, the rest of the action piece.
There you go.
Data
Yeah,
worksheet?
so not such that schools are,
We
but
could
to design, I would just say to design,
Evaluate
because that's the piece we
facilities
want them to
that
take.
foster community.
Yes, that's the one.
To design, build, and run schools, that, right, that's the,
Yeah, we're gonna
that,
do
we gotta
Yes,
get,
yes.
yeah.
And add after community that foster community engagement to design. Yeah.
You're gonna go all the way down.
After your
There's a
first
lot on this
community, add the
worksheet.
word engagement.
There was like.
Because they don't,
Gotta do
yeah.
some practice and
Foster
then
community
here's-
engagement or connection
as a
or however
heading
you want to
called
phrase that.
Design, build,
buildings,
and run
you're
schools.
gonna put
Yep,
number
to
one
design,
here,
build, and run.
Schools,
I don't love
2
engagement,
and 3.
Oh, okay.
yeah.
only because I think we use that as a buzzword
Yeah.
in
Okay.
this district.
Connection?
Doesn't mean what it means.
I just need to, thank you.
I think fostering.
Community by
Just
itself,
community
yeah.
alone.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I think something we do have to keep in mind, given our the political landscape, is the word equity. They don't really like that a lot, and I hear that something's happening within the Georgia State legislature around that, so we might wanna start thinking of alternative words so that this doesn't get tossed out. I don't know another way to say equity, but being mindful of
And then
the list of buzzwords we should avoid.
Right here.
I hear you,
That was the practice.
but I'm not falling into their trap. I mean, like, part of me says, I mean, I get it,
Scroll down.
but that is exactly what we're asking for, is equity.
See red.
And so we can,
Yeah, okay, perfect, got it.
I mean,
Lots
So
of
they say
organizations, I
sorry.
think, are jumping the gun. I was
Yeah, they don't
meeting with some
diversity,
folks
equity,
in
inclusion,
Florida
but-
before. They're like scared. I'm like, you don't even
Where am I
receive federal
supposed to be
funding.
going?
Why
So
are
we're
you?
punished tonight for using it. I'm in the nonprofit space.
You got it, or you still need to?
All right, so I'm sorry, I got
I hear you.
sidetracked.
so
Yeah.
each building should have
The data worksheets,
equitable resources, business.
and then the
So we need to
February
change
until May.
equitable.
And then
You know, I had a.
Wait, so we each doing a worksheet per team?
Yes,
I don't think so.
you should have access
Or is
to
it our
One
own
per team.
individual?
One per team.
Yeah, I'm in 4 right
Per
now.
team, okay.
Yeah.
Are you on,
Person from my TV.
you have another email?
So are you already in our worksheet? 'Cause I'm
No,
not. I'm checking like you already. You're in our, okay, good. I haven't even gotten to it yet, I'm all over here doing the most.
Because you should be able to edit. I'm not sure what has it on. Oh, open in a new window maybe?
Let's try this.
No.
DCSD miracles in consideration.
Oh, and now.
Miracles.
So maybe.
Thing is going on.
What were you saying?
We have to put a DCSD miracles
I don't
consideration
know. Let me
connection,
see.
and the miracles is.
Yeah, we need that miracles.
That thing
It's
is
back-
killing me.
It's long.
It's too long for an acronym.
It's
I'm
too
like,
long.
It should be very, very,
So
like,
what was the first one?
This was on equity, so I was trying to
And
find,
easily, most towards equity in the title.
okay, so I can just, wait, where?
Equity.
motion towards equity, yeah.
Oh, motion,
M, and you
okay.
could just put the letter.
Okay, okay, motion, motion towards.
Motion towards
Access
equity.
to
That one,
equitable re-
I don't know who
about
came up with
resources
this, but
as
that
well.
one has to go.
And know that resources, when you talk about buildings and districts, mean money,
Okay.
right? So if there's a financial miracles, it's probably that one as well.
Okay.
So you don't think too deep on the miracles. Most, everything we doing is gonna be connected.
Okay.
Well, to her point, are you all phasing out the word equity in movement, and what are you using in its place?
Access and opportunity.
Access, okay. So how do you guys feel about changing equity to access?
It's all, that's also in DEIA.
It is, but that's in alignment with what the county is going to. But yeah, that's my thing, I'm like, it is equity. At the end of the day, that's what we're asking
As
for.
private citizens,
Then go to that.
you guys are saying.
We can say whatever we need.
Yeah, that's
And
what
then
Do you have
we
another?
read it, her
Do you have
team
access
can
to this one or this
wordsmith.
one?
They can massage it into what it needs to be.
If
Just
it
gonna
needs
send
to
a
be
code to that
wordsmith.
email and
Fair.
then.
Yeah, this is from.
Won't be our responsibility.
And we don't have to, we don't work for these.
Yeah, it's from the team for.
Right.
Our philosophy at this moment is make me.
I love it.
Make me.
Because in my personal space, I refuse to change the words. I refuse. I gotta take pictures of this. Is this my phone?
And I'll upload this on our website so that you guys also, so that not only your committee has it, but also all the other committees can see
Okay.
what you guys did.
Okay. The pictures of our thoughts?
Yes.
Good, good, good.
And I could put it also in the Google Drive.
That would be helpful, yes, please.
I tried.
And then we have to,
And then we have to do the rest of it? So what are we addressing and
Oh, there it is.
Yes.
She's so straight, she's so straight.
I told you I'm getting meaner over time. I was really nice earlier. And I was like,
just like get on track.
We doing that together?
Because we will do that.
you can do it with your team.
Okay, where's the first
You can do it, I mean, you can do it as a team, because it's all, you guys did the same one.
Wait, where did you go to find that SAP vision piece? Or is it, it's in here?
So they go to your,
The vision's on the screen.
Ah, perfect, thank you.
sorry, your dots, your grid. And then
So the second one I put engage.
go to share grid. Okay, so then let's go back to that one. Yep, this one. Yes, ma'am.
Are they doing away with McNair?
Either
Somebody
share or
told me
we
that.
go to the tab, whichever.
The high
The
school?
high school, somebody told me that the other day. Or not doing away, they were gonna make it a technical school? Okay. I told the lady, I was like, really? Cause I'm on SAP.
I don't think so.
That didn't come up.
No, we just did a whole tab district through there to,
I was like, really? Where'd you hear that from?
There you go, so now you can edit it, if you go all the way to March.
but you do get a lot of that. I mean, with that 32% graduation rate, you might think.
Right.
32? Did you just say that?
Yeah.
Holy
Yeah, this is a really thick word.
Pretty low.
Yeah,
Okay, so
I
then
think
in
they're,
this
cause their
one,
numbers
you see
are low
March,
too.
then you can put all of your notes into this.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
And then
ma'am.
when I save it, it'll go automatically.
It'll automatically save and everything, yes, ma'am. You don't even have to hit save, it'll save, it'll save later.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Obama,
it does.
got a STEM program at the middle school. And they were not prepared to take those middle schoolers to the high school level. And it takes essentially 2 years to pull in, to get the approval. So you can't be like, okay, these 8th graders need these classes for 9th graders.
Next year.
Not happening.
It's not gonna happen. So you've lost this whole class, and then
Right.
they're telling their people behind them, hey.
Right,
that's
they're not
what
prepared.
And so you lose.
You don't have
nutrition.
continuity.
We're working on it. Hey, man, anybody wanna join me working on it?
Hey, I got you.
I have a 5th grader at Obama, and my goal
Okay.
is that by the time she's a 9th grader, that it'll be a viable option. She
We've
can,
been working on some programs for McNair. trying to introduce some additional options. They've got empty space not being used.
Mhm.
Let's take advantage of that.
I mean, once upon a time, it was being considered
Right.
to be a CTAE school, and that was, I can't remember who brought up, might have been brought up the CTAE. You know, as a district, I think we could be, I think in the average person's mind, CTAE is like auto body or
Cosmetology.
cosmetology. When in reality, it is architecture, it's nursing,
Right.
it is engineering, it is like, I think there's like 136 programs. And so some of them do require a major investment. You know, if you're trying to build cars, that's a lot of money. But if you're gonna be doing a business management class on entrepreneurialism,
That's a classroom.
you can slide that in.
Right.
Without a whole lot of additional
Support programs,
resources.
even for McNair, to bring some of those things to fruition, because with the development in the area,
Yes.
with the Public Safety Training Center,
Right.
at Promise Centers teach you those life skills. We've asked them to now partner with the school that is most close, or is
Right around the
closest
corner.
to
Yeah,
your development. And they're more than willing, but partner with that school to bring that program free of charge
yeah.
into that school.
Right.
And a lot of
The-
industry folks, that's what they wanna do. So I think BlackRock,
with-
yeah.
We got, was
Black
Black
Hole?
now
Yeah.
Shadowbox Studios. came.
Right, right around the corner.
So,
Not about
did
it.
they bring that, did they ever bring that
So they've
sound
started,
program into?
so they've started it, and they are on their like, I don't even know which cohort they're on now, but the problem is it didn't become exclusive to McNair, which is
Oh.
what the intent was.
That was the original
Right.
That was the
intent.
original
That was-
intent.
Yeah.
And
For
then you
that
have
space.
the programming that marries that, because if you want to build a set, you learn the carpentry work.
Yeah.
Right.
You get
Right.
into the film industry,
Bring 'em in.
that's a six-figure income because it's in film.
Yeah.
All of
Start.
this, you know,
Right.
Yeah.
lamp
Right.
dots,
But it's
all of
start
those
at
things.
high school.
18.
But they have
18,
facilities to manage.
Yeah.
It is
But
not
it's
in that
all
school.
very much a, like, you need the kids to get in the door, which means you need people in the community invested in sending their children to school, which, you know, if you were to go right now today,
It's not
you'd be
prepared.
like, why would I send my child
Right.
here? So we've gotta really do some work
And they don't know what's happening in the background, and how long will it be before that comes to
Right.
before it
fruition.
happens. And, yeah, being
Yeah.
okay with like, this is gonna take a
I'm gonna
while.
ride it out.
Yeah.
And saying, yeah.
Because you're sacrificing your child.
Right.
Right.
Who's gonna do that?
Right.
Who's gonna do that? Don't sign me up for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Right.
but I think the long range vision though is that high school actually partnering with the elementary school.
Yes.
And so like we've done things like athletics is like, can we get the pressure rep track team to practice at the high school? So like we practice at the middle school at this moment. But like it does something. They go to the middle school and they're like, oh my God,
right.
this is so cool. I can't wait till I go here. It's like,
Right.
yes, let's do it.
But that's the thoughts in the community.
Right.
And then the parents get to see the
Right.
facility and they see the building. They feel like, oh, this is a viable option for my child. It's close by. And then they get to
How's about this, when
talking.
people used to work out, they go on the track.
Track,
for the local high
right,
school.
they don't do,
You
yeah.
can't go down there anymore, you're not allowed.
That's what I'm saying, schools have
Off
been
hours.
closed
You're
off
not
now.
allowed.
They're closed off. You can't access them.
Get our security people to come and tell us what's going on.
Right, really.
Yeah.
Well, some of it's like closed
I'm sure
on
there are
purpose. So like, you've probably seen at Obama, is people will let their dogs
Mhm.
run
Which
free
blows my
and
mind.
poop on the playground.
Why?
What are you doing?
Why are you bringing your dog
But
over
that's
to
a
the pool?
different
Right.
You walk right
demographic
by the
of
park,
people
but
as
it's-
well. Yeah, we don't.
But you go to the school.
That's why.
But I mean, I think one of the things about our, you know,
Right.
That's not a dog park.
It's
Right.
not.
You guys giving you a dog park, and let's leave the school.
Right, you have a dog park.
Yes.
but then what do schools do as the second piece that we did as far as a community? Because a community also needs education, not the education that it
And then
gets
there's that part.
academically. But why, how do we know that this is not a space that people bring dogs and they poop on the playground? We have to have some conversation, because then we're constantly shutting people down without
They don't know us.
providing them any basic education. Every community, I mean, it's able to develop its spaces that are respected. And it's not a matter of social class or religion
Yeah.
or educational background. It's really how a community is socialized.
Right.
And schools are the greatest forces, one of the greatest
You
forces
got
for
900
socialization.
kids in a building.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
And then-
At least 900 parents.
And then, you know,
Yeah.
within DeKalb County, you don't necessarily have those mechanisms for outreach. Sure, if you're part of a civic organization, an HOA or something, there may be a way of reaching you. How do you catch all the others?
Yeah.
You know, and so do these schools start putting something out front, a QR code or something that just general members of the community are able to start to relate to the school and get that messaging? How do you create the scenario where the messaging gets
What's
out?
a lot of disconnect just, I mean, this is not just a DeKalb County.
Oh, no,
issue.
not
It's
now.
just
This is disconnect
disconnection,
in
just
general.
in general, so
Yeah.
it's just
But
disconnect
again,
in several
looking for, in
communities.
every location, at the local level, what's your best example?
The
Because
school.
you have places, you have community hubs everywhere.
Right.
How are they doing it?
How are
And
they
then
getting the
can you
information out?
adopt some of these practices as well?
Well, people don't talk to each other like they used to, because that's what it was, right? It
Just
was-
troll each other online.
Right, it was,
And then
you
your
know,
kids, you know, you had kids, you
Right.
found out a lot of things.
Right.
right, your kids tell you, then you go meet that person's parents,
Yeah.
and then you foster a relationship, and then you have a little, you know, okay, we got a little group here, and all the parents are talking, but that's not happening anymore. Parents are not talking.
Well, I think that the rest of that is like, particularly like pre-pandemic, you would go into the building and not have your kid's birthday party. Were you supposed to? Absolutely not, but were you? Probably.
Yeah.
So you get something, or you get the little invitation that came home and we'd all go to wherever, but I get much, much less of that.
Well, and
It's
see,
like
I don't know,
night and day
because,
with my son versus daughter, like pre-pandemic kid.
but then my children are suffering from that, because I don't know what was happening, you know,
Oh, yeah,
before
I'm saying that to say,
pandemic.
like, I feel like we saw it in, I feel like I saw it in
Real time, yeah.
It was like, yeah, you're right, like, you went from, you would run into somebody just taking your kid into the building.
Right.
I'm holding your science project, and, oh, you did this science project too? Oh my God, you were up until 11:30. I know it. And you don't have that now,
right,
it's, I.
Right.
And you don't even necessarily know which parents have kids in your class.
Right.
You don't even.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
No idea.
Now, in
With the
my,
younger kids, you do, like,
No.
well, my kid's in pre-K.
I wish.
I know, because, well, maybe, you participate as room mom and you kind of run into.
I wish.
But do I have phone numbers? Do I have a mechanism for reaching them? No, I
Right.
have to say something to the teacher.
Teacher.
Then the teacher then sends that information out.
Right.
At
It's
my
so
daughter's school, who's
tight-lipped.
in private, we have a group me.
Right.
And so all of the parents, when we don't understand, and I say we, as in the adults, we don't understand the homework assignment,
Right,
we're
we're
like,
checking in.
hey, what did you, but there's that communication, and we're all passing second grade together.
Right.
Right.
Well, and I created that for
Right.
my oldest son's classroom, because she put all the parents on the email, and I sent them all the emails, like, hey, I'm just gonna create a little group me outside of the teacher, so the parents can
Conversation.
communicate. We
Right.
got like 5 moms in there, right?
Yeah.
You can't even get in my pre-K 3 sons, you can't, it's so tight. It's it almost is to the point where it makes you feel like, what is happening?
Right.
Why can't we?
Right.
It's like a secret. So then, as a parent, you're like wondering, like, what is going on
You ever
as
hear
to
yourself,
why?
Like,
Yeah.
hey, can you pass my, Susie talks to Jonah all
Right.
day.
Can you?
give my cell phone number
Right.
to Jonah's mom?
'Cause they wanna
And let her
play
know
that.
she doesn't have to talk to me if she
Right.
doesn't want to. It's fine.
Right, it's so much,
Right.
and it's like,
It's
why
amazing.
can't we
It's
just,
complicated.
and then, it's so weird, and again, I'm talking about APS in Atlanta, or Atlanta DeKalb, and it's just, but the communication on the other side is just so open. You can, a sunshine card, yesterday I volunteered for picture day, just to make sure the kids look great. Today, I'm trying to volunteer this morning at my pre-K 3. Yesterday, I'm like, hey, can a parent come in and volunteer? Oh, the photographer brings someone. Well, if the photographer can bring a stranger, then why can't I?
Say, help me
I'm working for the photographer,
understand.
I'm working for the kids.
Right.
Well,
You
he's
definitely
bringing
need
somebody
someone
that,
there.
right,
Trust.
for
Yes.
3 and 4-year-olds.
Of course.
5 and 6 and 8 and 9.
Right.
You really
All
need
of them.
someone
But I'm like,
there.
how can the photographer bring someone in and a parent can't come in?
It's making no sense.
And you don't allow.
Well, you
that.
guys did great. Did you get some of their information that they shared? Or was it you? Great, then we don't have to share out because y'all did it together, amen. All right, some things that I am working on kind of between now and the summer is collecting as much data as possible. A lot of the questions you guys have, I'm working with the operations team to get as much in your Google Drives as I can. You'll see them broken up by building, boundaries, programs, or other. Like there's some other stuff that we have. So putting as much in there as we can get from our team. I do say this with a caveat, some stuff I can't get, right? Like, and so we'll just have to be okay with doing what we have, and maybe making some recommendations around what people need to get in order to make some further decisions, right? So we'll have to be kind of a little bit uncomfortable with the unknown a little bit. But there's a lot, we already have a lot, so I'll get, again, as much as I can. Very just, again, excited about like understanding like what costs of buildings are. I think that'll help kind of level set some stuff for us. Like if it costs 20 million to run a building, right? Like we can then think about like, well, if we have X amount of buildings that we don't use, like how can we funnel that money and resources into the buildings that we are using, that kind of stuff. So there is a stadium assessment audit that is coming that is again from the athletics and buildings and ground team. I know they did it. I believe they're analyzing the information now. So we'll be able to look at that. When you guys come back in the fall, there will be so many maps for you. Like, it's probably gonna be overwhelming because there will be scenarios of elementary, scenarios of middle, scenarios of high school, and all that will come from these guiding principles that we're setting.
Is the assessment audit goal just to look at condition, or what is it?
I think it's gonna give recommendations on what they should do with some of these buildings. I do think that they looked.
Assessing with the stadium's location, or just?
Not location necessarily, conditions, and then and then high school facilities or something like that, high school athletic facilities. There's something around
But a lot of them like aren't ADA compliant, so if you go in and you make any change, you gotta change.
You have to
the
change
entire
everything.
building. So what does that look like?
But location, I'm not sure if that's on there. I'll be interested to see if it is.
When we
So.
had our group discussion, we did talk about proximity to different schools, like what school uses which, because the schools are assigned to a specific stadium.
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting, especially if you're real close and you get to use it all the time. Like there's some schools like backyard, that's a stadium.
It's almost their home stadium.
It is legitimately.
Right.
And we got some Godot stuff you guys already have, so it'll just be interesting to start when we talk about triangulating data. When you come up with a recommendation, I'm gonna say, so one, does it meet your guiding principle? And because I know the guiding principles are connected already to the vision and miracles, right? So does it meet your guiding principle? And then how have you triangulated that? So if our recommendation is that we should have a bunch of K2, 3, 5, 6, 8s, and 9, 12, tell me what data point that meets. Tell me how that connects to projections or, current or projected enrollment. And what did parents and families say about that? Because we asked them that too, right? So that's how you kind of triangulate it. Because if we can't get to the triangulation, then you're going to have to come back with something else. So that's, again, just getting you to the journey here. I went to church, and I don't go to church often, but I went to church this Well, what did I do?
When you said I went to church, I thought you said you just said. She cool with me. You just said it. I'm like, okay.
Love guys. All the way under the church bus. So that one time I went to church in Georgia. I love you guys are hilarious. This was the message. Interestingly, like again, don't go often. And I went and I was like, I think I'm supposed to be doing this work. To reimagine means to rethink, to revise something in a new and creative way, often breaking away from traditional perspectives, assumptions, or limitations. It involves seeing possibilities that were previously overlooked and approaching an idea, concept, or situation with a fresh mindset. And I looked up, I said, I know you lying. Like,
I was supposed to be here.
I was supposed to be here today. So it was just a nice, good reminder that it's okay for us to think differently. It's okay for us to be like, hey, so K2 schools, let's think about it, right? Like it's okay for us to reimagine this. And a lot of our board members are really pushing on this journey now, which is really, really exciting. So as we start coming up with ideas in the fall, right after about Thanksgiving, I'm gonna start putting this stuff out like, hey, come imagine K-2 schools with us. Come imagine having community schools with us, what this means. Come imagine, right? And then start getting feedback from people. I'll kind of have essentially, and Kayla's gonna hate me, but I'll have kind of an open forum that we'll have to start analyzing probably on a daily basis, because I'm sure we'll get a lot of traction once we start putting those videos out and putting out like, hey, what about more K-8s, right? And people are gonna be like, what are you talking about, right? And so once we start getting, so typically like you get the like avalanche of all the questions and ideas, and then it simmers down, so okay, let me actually think about that, right? So prepared for that. And so we'll be doing that a lot in the fall.
So quick question.
Yes.
You just had community work up there.
Oh.
I'm curious, so I know you're like taking all of the sites, right?
Mhm.
Southwest North. How are you, because I'm really curious, like this discussion we just had about all these things, right? Because we're coming from a place of seeing what isn't.
Yeah.
What are the people who feel like we have it all?
Great
What are they saying?
question. I'll
Like,
tell you, you're jumping to the end of the presentation. It's coming. So just a little bit about, again, you guys kind of got the March, April, May will be this again, right, replicated. In June, we'll kind of start our Summer Institute, where we'll start reviewing all of this and start developing some suggestions and ideas for you guys to look at when you come on. I'll start the onboarding process of any new members. And then in August, we'll kind of finish on that, and then we'll kick back in September. This is always there. So a few things about what's next. You guys got your next 2 meetings. Just, again, start as you've gone through this process once now, right? Like, we'll just repeat. So start thinking about what that looks like. There was definitely a huge comment about the meeting of the whole, to your point, and it's like, can we do this more often? Absolutely. I wanted us to learn separately because it is very, very specific to those areas, which is great. Like, now you get a deep understanding. We got like the push on the data that we need. We pushed on our area chiefs to get us some information. And as we get all that information, then we got to start coming together as a whole. So 2 suggestions came up from just people that are committee members. One, can we have meeting at the holes at AIC in the building? And then 1, can we alternate in-person and virtual? Those were the 2 questions that came up. So if we do that, then I'm gonna ask, especially the virtual one, I'm gonna ask for y'all to come twice a month, starting in September, if we alternate between, because the virtual one, love it, but I am an in-person person, but I love the convenience. But I think what would happen is that we would do the learning together in person, and then we can come back virtually and do some of the work, or vice versa. Or sorry, do the learning together and come in person and do the work. So like, we can learn all together, like, hey, here's some maps to think about and blah, 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 and then we'll come back together in person as a whole committee, and we'll probably mix y'all up a little bit then. Because you're right, there are very geographic needs, right? And I think that from what I've at least heard from the other committees, they're kind of on pace with what y'all saying. They are kind of on pace. There's a lot of equity talk. There's a lot of conversations in those committees about programs or minimizing programs. I'm hearing a lot, like do more at local schools. I'm hearing that a lot. Get rid of trailers. We're hearing that a lot, right? Like, that is not safe for kids. Or I can't imagine a conducive learning environment. I'm sure the teachers are doing a phenomenal job of what they have, but like at the end of the day,
Under-resourced.
not great, right? And so they're not super far off, which has been, it's interesting, not super far off. So just trying to prepare for that. I'll probably be emailing you guys in the summer like, hey, here's what we're thinking about for the next year. Tell me what you think. So we'll probably do that, I would imagine, up until we're getting a little close to the board, and then we might come back in person.
Okay.
So that's coming.
And so is April boundaries and May is programs? Or is it the other way around? Oh.
Buildings, boundaries, programs, yes. So we'll do boundaries next month, yeah. Yeah. Yay! Oh, sorry. And what I talked about earlier, which is why probably people aren't here, we'll be taking all of the team's guiding principles, putting them together. We'll probably pare some of them down because a lot of them are similar, and saying, here's the top like 18. We need to pare this down to 4, right? And there's a process I'm working with our assessment team. See that little thing y'all just did? Guess what? We're gonna do that again. That was your test run. So we'll a lot of them have a lot of similarities. So there is something called Max Diff. It's like a survey software that we're gonna try to use to say like, which one of these meets X the best? And then we'll just kind of go to that. So I'm working with our assessment and surveying team to build that out. So those will be those virtual times. So after each month, we'll do a virtual one. Everybody gets together, and then we'll come down with our top 4 or 5, and then we'll do that each month. And then that'll be the end of the year. Yay! Oh, Kayla's computer does not like me. Oh, the exit ticket is in the back of your packet.
And it died
See?
right at 8:30.
She said, and it's time to go. Please fill it out for us. If you don't have a packet, let us know. We'll bring it over there if you can scan the QR code. Thank you. Great work. Great work.